Bog Panda.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Bog Panda After Dark. We are going to suspend regular programming for one moment to allow Mike the opportunity to apologize to me. Mike? Oh, wait, maybe I need to help you a little bit. On our first Bog Panda After Dark, I mentioned, it might be good for this to be kind of grayscale, kind of film grainy and all that. And it was very clear by the interaction that Mike was going, like, you could pull that off. Like, that's not going to happen. People are going to be watching and you're not going to see it. But as you can see from this video now, I was able to pull it off. And I was able to pull it off on the first one as well. And so, again, I return to Mike. This is your opportunity to apologize to me.
I do apologize, sir. And again, I apologize to everybody if I cough on this. Kelly did get me sick over Zoom. But I do apologize, sir. I actually think the After Dark look is excellent.
Yeah. But you didn't think it was going to be. And so this is the thing I'm going to remember. And so, and I was doing a laptop swap during this time, and some of the add-ons that kind of help with some of those filters were, I bought it and installed it on one system. We didn't have the physical copies. And so it's that kind of trick of, is it going to let me do it? Do I got to deactivate here and all that stuff? And it was a little tricky, but I was bound and determined to make sure that we were in black and white with some film grain. So good. Well, I'm glad you like it. And yeah, shockingly enough, that I am actually, got to be honest with you, is that I suggested the second After Dark. We had
because Kelly, to the surprise of everyone, was a little apprehensive about this After Dark series.
Yeah. Little bit. And I'm still, I think, tonight should prove interesting. I mean, we were able to navigate the last one pretty easy. However, if the last one was a little bit of a minefield to negotiate, what we're going to talk about tonight is a minefield over broken glass with lasers
and everything's on fire.
Yes. So this one may prove to be a little trickier. I guarantee you it's going to be a little trickier. But hi, we're Bog Panda. This is Bog Panda After Dark. We really would appreciate it if you would give us a subscription to our much more wholesome content on the Bog Panda channel. Give us a subscribe, like a video or two, leave us a comment on the kind of content you'd like to see. Check out our website. There's a link there to a fine merchandise store. There's a link in the video description to it as well. You can check some t-shirts. Guess we're going to need an After Dark t-shirt.
I was going to say, we need an After Dark shirt now.
Yeah, we're going to have to get that done. Probably won't be able to use too many quotes from the After Dark shows, would be my guess.
Especially not this one.
Yeah, not this one at all. But yeah, take a look at that. So, because, as I was in recovery mode after the first After Dark, and looking through, we had talked in the past kind of multiple times as Mike put his PowerPoint together on here's why Bog Panda needs an After Dark segment, and I was running all those through. One of his main points was, Custer's revenge and the need to talk about Custer's revenge. And so, being the dutiful host that I am, I wanted to do a little bit of research to better understand the whole Custer's revenge ecosystem, if you will. And much to my surprise, there was a fair amount of content out there. I don't know if I'll be able to pull this off or not. So this one, you should doubt me on, Mike, because I don't know if I'll pull it off. But in here somewhere, maybe you'll get a clip from one of the creators of it where he's kind of like, oh no, it's just kind of like they're just getting along. He really misrepresents the nature of the game in a horrible way.
Hard backpedaling.
But we'll see if we can get that clip in here somewhere, or you may see it a couple times. Who knows?
The maker of Custer's Revenge tells us the $50 home video game is not racist.
Not intended that way. What we have here is, Custer and an Indian girl. We don't say it's rape. We don't say it's ravage. Other people have made that statement. We have not. What you have here is, Custer and the Indian girl getting together.
But we'll see. But if not, we'll certainly talk about their backpedaling and kind of what was actually going on. But while Custer's Revenge certainly probably deserves its own show, I figured let's get through this in one one swoop. That's a guillotine drop once on me here, because we're gonna talk about a bit of the catalog of American Multiple Industries, or AMI, under many labels, but that seems to be the parent company. And then there's like a Mystique tie-in, and then there's Swedish Erotica presents Mystique. So there's lots of kind of interconnections.
Yeah, it was all very confusing. And I remember kind of even when I was introduced to it, like, was Mystique the company? Is it a line of games? What does it have to do with Swedish Erotica? And I think it's important at this point, just for the soundbite. Are you a Swedish Erotica guy, sir?
I am not. And even after learning a little more about, I mean, the only redeeming quality that I will give Swedish Erotica is that they were one of Ed Wood's last employers. And so, credit where credit is due there. So good for them that they helped Mr. Wood out there at the end. But I think all of his work was uncredited. So
yeah, he towards the end of his life would just do any sort of work that came along, and he directed. There's no real clear idea of how many he directed, but he's usually attributed for the first like dozen or so releases in the Swedish Erotica line, as far as the shorts and films and things like that. You are an Ed Wood guy in general?
I am definitely an Ed Wood guy in general. Not so much the Swedish, not his Swedish Erotica work, but pre that. So
pre that.
Yeah.
I'm a huge Ed Wood fan. One of the weirdest things that I ever got to experience in my career is after making a movie called Evil Bong. That movie was very successful. And I was talking, when you do something that's successful in a field, people want you to do more of that. So for the first time, people were like, hey, what other movies would you like to work on and stuff like that? I don't know how it happened that we got here, but I almost was directing an Ed Wood remake of one of his films, and it was one of his later film, not a Swedish Erotica film, but it was one of his later films, so it was definitely edgier, more in line with the times. I'm not going to say the name of it because there was the reason it never happened is there was a giant legal dispute that was going on at the time. And I think the way that I actually got attached to it at one point was one of the rights holders at that time had said they were planning on remaking it. And I was like, well, if somebody's going to ruin it, it'll be me.
There you go.
Think that's how I threw my hat in there for it. And there was real serious talks about that. And at some point I would love to do something sort of Ed Wood adjacent, but I'm glad that remake never happened because I really didn't want it to. I just figured I could screw it up just as bad as anybody else could. So that's kind of how that came. And part of my pitch, though, was I wrote a theme song to it. I still have that song. So at some point, like, I'm sitting on this Ed Wood song that someday is going to come out.
Yeah, see, this is where, our t-shirt company doesn't, they get all squirrely when we use people's names, because a t-shirt saying, I'm sitting on an Ed Wood song is a good t-shirt, but I just know the joy killers from the company will stomp it down, and I'll post it. It'll be up for a minute, and then it's like, no, you can't do that one. I'm like, fine. So we'll have to see. Which is also why the Pointer Sisters will have no place in Alice Cooper's Coke Army. Will also not ever be t-shirt, even though it should be a t-shirt.
100% should be.
So we'll have to see on that. But back to, stalled probably as long as I can. Back to AMI. So what we're going to talk about tonight on After Dark is 3 of their titles. One,
of which there were technically 10.
Oh God. I think maybe I stopped reading the article after I kind of got those first 3 kind of covered. But so this is Custer's Revenge, which is the most notorious of them. There's also Bachelor Party, and Beat 'em and Eat 'em, which
Beat 'em and Eat 'em, I would say, is my favorite of this. The best known trilogy of their line.
Yes, a parallel to Kaboom, I guess, in a way. But so these are Atari 2600 games. If you thought the Halloween licensed game of on the Atari 2600, which we have, go back, check our catalog. We've talked about it in a non-dark episode. If you thought the play on that was a bit repetitious and redundant, buckle up because
well, this kind of taps into something we covered in the first After Dark episode too. And one of the reasons I had suggested Strip Fighter 2 being the kind of initial go around for that is it's a playable game. And that's where the Mystique games fall apart.
Yeah.
It really is the one thing that I agree, because a lot of that article and a lot of the things you'll find are the people who are involved in these games is tons of backpedaling and downplaying the content of the games. Tons of it. The one thing they do keep saying, though, is, and I believe this, the games are a joke, essentially, that they're not meant to be taken seriously. It's like a dirty joke in video game, in very crude video game form, crude even for that time, video game form. That I agree with. These are not real games. These are not fully fleshed out games in the way that Strip Fighter 2 is.
Yeah, no pun intended.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
hard not to sound like all of these are double entendres, but they're not meant to be.
It is, and that's, I mean, again, that's the point I was going to bring up too, is that so Strip Fighter 2, I mean, you could actually talk about the gameplay. You could,
right.
It is there are adult elements to it, but they are flourishes or enhancements. They are not the entire purpose of the game. They are an extension of the game to kind of put it into the adult arena, and the cutscenes kind of lean obviously into that harder than the during some of the gameplay, although there's a little bit of the gameplay as well. But these are very much the premise, the joke premise. Once you understand this is how you're playing the game, this is what you're doing, the end. It's
That's
all
it.
over then,
Yeah.
because there's no real playability to it. And highly repetitive. It's just not a thing. And it is basically a dirty joke. And I guess my question would be, at that time, Atari cartridges were rolling out around $30 a piece, until the death knell of Pac-Man, which the Atari 2600, which rolled out at around $45 or $50. These all started at $50. So you were shelling out $20 more than for an Atari 2600 game for a thing that is like, oh, that's the premise. It's a dirty joke. And the end.
That's it. Yeah.
You're not.
It is a single joke in video game form.
Yep. So,
and that's why, like, believe it or not, I'm actually not a fan of shock tactic stuff in general. That's why with a lot of the stuff that I do, I try to I love doing like dark, disturbing things and really upsetting people, but I try not to do it with overt shock stuff, because in my opinion, you can only kind of shock somebody once. There's this great documentary called Metal: A Headbanger's Journey, and they're showing this like conservative woman, a Cannibal Corpse album, and like showing her the artwork and lyrics and things like that, and she's going on and on about how horrified she is. I'm like, no, she's not. Because the first song or two, maybe she's shocked. By like the fourth song, she gets it. She understands what this is going to consistently sound like. She's not really shocked anymore. She might not like it. Like it's not going to win her over by song 6 on the album, but she's not shocked anymore. You can only, like, shock wears off pretty quickly. And that's the problem with these games. When you build it off of just the shock of the dirty joke thing, there's no game behind that. So once you're past that, whether you think it's funny or not, that's it.
Yeah. And it's even, I mean, there's even not a lot of, these aren't even good dirty jokes. This is just, them going, male organ.
Look, it's naked person, kind of. If you squint really hard.
Yeah, maybe.
This is Atari 2600 graphics we're talking about here.
Yeah. So I mean, you are limited, and it's really, kind of a grim sign for humanity when you see somebody who's like, how can I give it Atari 2600 confines? I need to try and illustrate an erection. So there's not a lot there's not a lot you can do. and it's just unpleasant to see what they have done.
And I think ironically too, if it wasn't for Custer's Revenge, I don't think these games would be as well known as they are.
Yeah.
Like the backlash over that is largely why the Mystique games weren't known in the first place.
Yeah, which is pretty legitimate too. When when it's not only a dirty joke, but it's a dirty joke about sexual assault.
And that's the interesting thing about the article is they're trying to backpedal that, and what the actual official released package, the way it's described on there versus what you're actually seeing in the game. And again, squinting and kind of imagining is happening.
Yeah, because so I guess we'll kind of talk about the gameplay of each of these. Might as well do Custer's to get it out of the way and go in. Is that you're an incredibly post Viagra Custer. Well, in only your hat. I believe all you got is your hat, maybe your boots too.
I think it's hat and boots. Yeah,
hat and boots.
Which we've all been there.
Yeah, that's no big surprise.
Yeah.
No big joke there. And you have to navigate arrows and potentially a prickly cactus on occasion to navigate.
And these are all single screen games. These are not. Yeah. Single screen, no change in level. Because even with Halloween, even though the other rooms kind of look the same as the first room, you had like 2 floors and 6 rooms. Yeah,
like,
it's a house you're navigating.
Yeah, this is the distance from Custer to the pole, because on the other end of the pole there's referred to as a maiden in their write-up at the end, but Native American woman who you certainly are going to tell from the graphics. She's standing up against a wall. There's a barrier. There's the end of the game, and Custer's job is to make his way across the challenges and make friends with the maiden. So it in this, in the descriptions, they're in full backpedal mode. It's like, well, they just, they were very glad to see each other. They hooked up and they thought it was great. But the cover art reveals, because you're not going to tell again from the Atari 2600 videos, but the cover art, kind of lets you know, say, the female on the other side is actually tied to that pole, which you can't tell in there. The storyline, as originally written until they backpedaled off of some of that too, also indicated that, and the revenge part of Custer's Revenge was played up a little bit more. Not a funny joke to begin with.
No.
Not a concept worth even trying to do any humor about.
And I feel like, and obviously, because Kelly already kind of touched on it, like, I think they realized at the last minute how much in poor taste this was, because they revised the packaging and changed the descriptor on the back of the box to present this in a different way than it was initially presented. And if it wasn't for the fact that they'd sent out press kits with the original back of the box and the original write-up on there, I mean, again, you have to squint and put together a lot in your imagination with these Atari 2600 games, but the original descriptor had come out exactly the way Kelly described it. And then on the actual released version of it, this is a fun, consensual thing. And her name is Revenge.
Yeah.
So that's the Custer's Revenge part.
That's, you're in such spin mode at that point in time.
Just
I mean, props to at least come up with that. It's still super lame, but it's like, hey, how about her name's Revenge? That's all we got. Let's go with it.
We already programmed a title screen, so Revenge has got to be.
It's got to be in there, so that works. So it was, and this will carry forward to the other 2 videos. So Irredeemable, no question.
Yeah,
bad about it there.
And not only that, but a bad game.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I mean, totally. Just because, and I was talking to Mike previously because a version of this is available on Super Console X, and I wasn't convinced I said, I think there's something wrong with the version I have.
Yeah.
I don't think it's playable. But after kind of doing a little bit more, I was like, no, I was playing it. That was
Yeah,
totally
that's it. Yeah,
it
you
is.
got it.
The gameplay is so bad you don't know if you're on an intro screen or you're actually playing the game. It's that bad. But their attempt on this one, and they did it on the other ones, which we'll talk about here briefly in a second as well, is that, gender swap. There we go. We'll do it. So we'll switch roles. All better. Now there's no issue. And so a slightly better tactic than we'll name her Revenge, but still no good. Still good. But yeah, so that was Custer, and it they hung on as long as they could, but that it never. I mean, I think there were some copies sold, but its life was very limited with full justification and incredible.
Yeah, I think once the backlash of it started, and again, I think the irony of it is if there wasn't the backlash, I don't know that people would really know about these games beyond a small, cult audience that it probably would have eventually gotten. And I do think the other Mystique games, including the two we're going to talk about, are far better games, and not just because of the content being something that isn't offensive. I mean, I guess it depends. Anybody can be offended by anything, but it isn't something that's inherently offensive in the way that it's in the same way that Custer's Revenge is.
The other two are pre-offensive. Now, I will give you this one's like 2 or 3 levels of just wrongness. I mean, it is so stratosphere offensive, no question about it.
It goes beyond. So Custer's Revenge goes beyond surface level shock value dirty joke into something that is generally offensive, as opposed to the other ones we're getting into what they claim that they intended to do the whole time, which is just the dirty joke game kind of thing.
Yeah. And this was, and this isn't true just for these titles. This is, something that I always felt one of the great wrongs of the universe was the disconnect between what an Atari 2600 cartridge game cover looked like and what you played. It's very different. It's very, very different in terms of that. So we'll likely have some of the images floating by. You'll see on that. Okay, so I'm done with Custer if you are.
Yeah.
So the other two are Bachelor Party and Beat 'em and Eat 'em. And again, this, they're advertising this in adult magazines, selling these things for $20 over the 2600 cartridge. I think they generated some interest, and there were people out there that are willing to shell out $50 for a bad, dirty joke that's a fairly unplayable game. But to Mike's point,
and we kind of touched on it, but part of their sales pitch was they were tying this to the Swedish erotica line, which is a line of movies, short films, and loops that were out. They were extremely popular. They may even still be around. I have no idea how many there are or anything, but were extremely popular at the time. My knowledge of them kind of begins and ends with the Ed Wood stuff because I'm a huge Ed Wood fan. But I know it was an extremely popular. I can remember when I was a kid seeing these videos and stuff like that. And this is stuff that predated me by decades. So this stuff has been around for a long time. It's an extremely popular adult line. So they kind of bought their way into that to kind of get some credibility. So similar to like if you were to do something and license the Playboy name or something like that to put towards it, just a recognizable brand to get your foot in the door.
Yeah, and then we're including a link to this very well researched, very lengthy article that covers this kind of whole universe. Kind of tied into this at some point in time is the initial distribution chain that's kind of running down, that this AMI is part of it, all that. Is also distributing children's programming. They got into VHS tapes, and there's certain VHS tapes which are going into a back room behind a curtain, and then there are other VHS tapes that they're making available with a very familiar logo. when you see it, it's probably one you've come across before, but it was kind of all part of one conglomerate until people started to connect dots, and then that was all done.
So that, and again, like it was great. There's a lot of stuff in this article I didn't know, and it was great kind of seeing it all laid out, but I did know. So the company Kelly's talking about is FHE, which when I was a kid was a huge deal. Like when you would go to school, they would show you FHE tapes because that was like the acceptable. If you saw that logo, you knew there was nothing that could be offensive on that video. So that was like the one thing like every kid's parents would let them watch were FHE tapes, which stood for Family Home Entertainment. So you would see these tapes everywhere. I remember my little sister having FHE tapes, and they were just super, super popular. I did know that the death of FHA was related to it coming out that they were somehow tied to porn, but I had no idea it tied in all this though. But I did, so it was cool to kind of see it all come together in this article.
Yeah, it's a very interesting and strange world. But that also then produced Beat 'em and Eat 'em and Bachelor Party. And so relatively, Bachelor Party is kind of like Breakout. And Beat 'em Eat 'em is kind of like Kaboom, but different.
There are differences.
there are differences. And so I'm gonna let you cover Beat 'em Eat 'em. I'm gonna.
It's actually my favorite of the three. So
that's good. So I think that absolutely, I wouldn't want to take that from you. So I'll let you.
I appreciate it.
I'll just react. And by react, it'll be not say a lot. And so, but Bachelor Party, you said Breakout ish, but you are your paddle. It's playing horizontally instead of vertically. Your paddle is a bottle of Spanish Fly, which was 1970s talk on. Oh, that's it's gonna just women will be powerless to you when they you drop a little Spanish Fly in their drink. So I mean, early inspiration for Bill Cosby, I guess. I don't know.
So Bill Cosby actually, and this
made a joke.
Came back. Yeah, he had a whole bit about this. Yeah.
So you got Spanish Fly as your paddle, and it is projecting or propelling a naked man into Atari 2600 version of a naked man.
Let me just stop you right there. Did you ever think you were going to say propelling a naked man?
No. I mean, so first of all, there's, I'm what I expect to say at some point in time working with you has really been expanded. At this point in time, so there's a chance there'll be things I'm going to say sometimes because I'll have no other choice. But no, that was not in my early cut list stuff. It's certainly not a t-shirt title. So, but yeah, you're propelling the naked man into again the 2600 version of a whole bunch of multicolored, and here I don't mean gender or race diverse, I mean different color, green and purple and whatever, naked women, and when contact is made, that's points. The contact takes a little bit out of your naked guy, so he's got to go back the Spanish Fly to recharge, which actually I think is not. It should have been a thing of Viagra, but Viagra wasn't around at that time. But so there's a little plot hole in the game. Sorry, folks.
I like that you're questioning the storyline.
I'm not buying this. There's no way that bottle's gonna that quickly. Yeah. So you're gonna have to suspend your disbelief a little bit, but. Upon hitting the paddle, returning back to the field of action, he's ready to go. And so it's basically that kind of gameplay of clearing the room of all the females, and again offers a gender swap, so that you can bachelorette party, you can do the reverse. So there's that.
Counting the gender swap options, I do believe there were 10 games. One of the things that's pretty cool, and I've never seen I've seen physical cartridges of the Mystique games at retro stores and things like that. The ones I've never seen that the article brings up, though, is that on some of the cartridges, they had 2 games in one. And instead of just putting the ROMs on the same cartridge, you actually had a cartridge that you flipped over.
Oh, that's kind of a cool idea.
Yeah, so that I've never seen before, and that's pretty cool, and that's actually kind of cool and innovative. And if another company had done it, there probably would have been more of that. But I don't think anybody was looking to follow in their footsteps after all the controversy.
No. All right.
But
It's your big show. Have at
that
it.
brings us to Beat 'em and Eat 'em. I would argue the best of the three games that we're talking about. It's the most playable, the most responsive in terms of control. All these are very simplistic graphics. You really have to fill in all of the blanks with your imagination. These are look like Lego blocks thrown on a screen that you have to imagine are men and women in lascivious acts. Beat 'em and Eat 'em's a little more clear though than the other ones. I would say.
Yeah. Unfortunately, yeah.
So I guess it has the best graphics in that sense. Again, that's very relative. We are talking about Atari 2600, but it's definitely the easiest to control and the most clear of a game out of all these. You are controlling naked female characters. Again, these are blocks. These are like Lego bricks, not even stacked well. Like, don't think Lego competition shows, think like a toddler stacking Legos together. That's what these look like. So naked female characters you're controlling, running around on the street, as a naked male character sends projectiles down from a rooftop, and they have to collect these projectiles before they hit the ground. I feel like that was a pretty diplomatic way of handling that.
I was wondering how that was going to be handled.
I nailed it. I'm patting myself on the back here.
Yeah. I mean, and for the gender, I think we can the gender swap side of this. Let's just say lactation is involved. To flip the script, if you will. But yeah, and it's a thing. I would agree. I mean, if you kind of parse out everything else that's going on and just kind of go for the kind of challenge response, kind of what I'm trying to do and whatever, and gameplay control and all that, I would agree. The best of the three, but but that's about it, because there's just how they upon success, how the kind of little it's just horrible. I just
Yeah, none of these are good games, and that's what makes
No.
games like this different from where we started with Street Fighter 2, which, I'm not going to say is as good as Street Fighter 2, the game it was parodying, but is a playable game, a full playable game.
Right.
These are not. These are very one-note, literal one-screen games, bare minimum of interaction to even call them video games in some cases. I would say Beat 'em and Eat 'em's the best because it is the most interaction and best control you're going to get out of the three of them. And as far as the sloppy Lego block look characters, at least you can kind of get you can use a little bit less imagination and kind of still understand what's happening on screen.
Yeah. Oh joy. thank goodness.
Yes. You may not want to, but you can.
Yeah. I mean, I still think there's, even with this game, I have some issues with the physics, that I'm not buying certain things.
Kelly knows this is experience. Kelly's like, listen, this is like perifractic. I did tests.
if you're on a rooftop, let me tell you, this is not how it works.
There's no outtakes of Kelly's tests for this. So.
No, this would be. Yeah, and this one is definitely one we don't want to see a kind of a high polygon count recreation of.
There's no HD remakes of these games.
Take a big pass on that, folks. So, yeah. So these, I mean, so it's amazing what, apparently some people were willing to spend $50 for a not good dirty joke for a basically unplayable video game. So there's that. So that's kind of a neat little stuff. But highly recommend you read the article that we've included in the video description, because it's a fascinating world.
It's an excellent article. It's very interesting. All part of what is interesting to me about retro gaming, and we kind of touched on this a little bit before, it's not just my own nostalgia of playing the games. It's this world is crazy. The retro gaming world, because this is before you had gigantic companies like Microsoft and Sony and stuff involved in this. It's kind of the Wild West where people are just doing crazy stuff and seeing what sticks, whether it's, you know, the Mystique line for Atari 2600 or people putting games on vinyl records for C64 and stuff like that. Like there was it's crazy and creative and weird and all kinds of stuff going on. And that's really what interests me about retro gaming. Then you throw on my own nostalgia for some of these games, and it just the icing on the cake for me.
Yeah. And just, you know, because there is
eating reference.
Yeah. Thanks for that. But on a more serious note, no, the innovation, because, you know, just think so, like Mike talked about the double-sided cartridge, the fact that this conglomerate that brought us these fine titles, I mean, they cracked the code early on some VHS distribution things, and so they were kind of in this, you know, it's early in the days of all this stuff, and so somebody's getting the market first, saying, "Hey, we're good at this. This is a market that's starting to emerge. VHS. We're good at distribution. We can get stuff out. You got some kid stuff, get it out. Hey, Ed Wood, come here. We can do some stuff over here." So they were not picky on what they were doing the video distribution for, but they did crack the code on some good distribution kind of stuff. I would argue from a gameplay perspective, no code was broken in the development of these games. Because I think your description of a toddler with Legos is pretty good, but it was during an earthquake and a hailstorm. The toddler is building with the Legos to give the full imagery of what was going on there. So that's it's the second After Dark, and we covered 3 games during it. I'm tired. I need some me time. That me time will not include playing any of these games we've discussed this evening. So,
sure.
Yeah. So thanks for watching, folks. We were kind of excited to see our first After Dark did okay. And so we'll be interested to see on this. Would love to hear your comments on kind of this kind of AMI stuff, or things that are going on in general. And you know, we'll be back at some other point with a little more of this content, certainly a lot more retro gaming content as well. So thanks for watching, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Go watch an Ed Wood movie.